what is a beat reporter for the general audience?
So a beat reporter is somebody who, like for me, for example, I go to all the home games. I give all the news about, like, when I get news about the guys on the team, injuries, or someone's playing or someone's playing or someone got called up to Brooklyn, someone got called or sending down to Brooklyn, like that's, or sending down to Long Island from Brooklyn. That's always kind of been my job, is to go on Twitter, report that. I'm with NetsDaily, which is the site, and most of the time, like they kind of just put me, like, saying like, yeah, you do all Long Island Nets stuff, and I was like, awesome, like I love going to Nets games. So dude, that's really what a beat reporter does, is all the breaking news, all the game coverage. I covered every single game, home and away. I was at all the home games, but that's always been like my thing. Is I watch it, I like to write, so I get to combine the two things. And I think that's the biggest job of a beat reporter, is just to deliver news and not be. Look, I know there's a lot of journalists, especially in the wrestling world. For anyone who's watching who might follow wrestling, there's a lot of I don't know the correct terminology, but not the best journalists, to say the least. And it's the most important thing is just being fair, being unbiased. I'm a Long Island Nets fan, but I'm not going to be like, oh, they are always playing amazing, or oh, they're always playing terrible. Like, you report on what you see, so you're not going to be like, oh, so and so is doing a great job, meanwhile they're having a bad game. Bad games happen in sports, but you always want to be 100% factual, 100% truthful, and just be passionate about what you do.
For audiences, like for general public, what is the difference between covering the G League and then, I guess, with the people you work with who cover the NBA, and you maybe from your own experience, is there more leeway in terms of like time you get to spend with players when you're covering the G League versus maybe like the NBA? Like, what are some of the differences that you've kind of seen over your past year?
Well, I love covering the G League for sure, because the biggest reason I would say is these guys haven't always reached the NBA yet. I mean, yes, you have Tariq Whitehead, who has been in the NBA, who is recovering from an injury. But the biggest difference is these guys are getting their start most of the time at the G League. If you, like, let's say I was working on the Brooklyn Nets with the Brooklyn Nets, I'd be working with Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson. There'd be like 100 reporters around, and it would just be like not as personable. Whereas when I went to the Long Island games, I was one of the only media people there, and I don't say that as a bad thing, because I got to work with the players, work with Coach Mufon Udofia, work with GM Matt McDonald a couple times, and it's much more personable, much more homey type of feel. Whereas the NBA, I mean, they do their job to make it like feel like they're not rushing you, but you also need to keep in mind there's like 50, 60 reporters probably per press conference. Like, it's not just you in a room. Whereas Long Island, I was like I said, I was the only one there, so it was a lot of fun. I loved it, and I like the personal feel of it. That's the biggest difference, is much more homey, much more personal type of feel.
Yeah, I definitely I feel that, because like, even if I'm not like I don't report or like cover the team, I went to a lot of the Capital City Go-Go games the past 2 years, and something I really love about the Go-Go is like they'll at each game at the very end they'll go and just high five all the fans. And I don't feel like that's something, you can see at the NBA level. And the fact that they can just go around, high five everybody, they start to remember like who's there. I think that's such a, like you're saying, a personal aspect of like the G League too.
That's what drew me to the G League as a fan before I even started covering it, was just the personal aspect, like very community oriented. Long Island does a fantastic job caring about the community, doing things, outreach programs, doing camps with kids, they have a women's camp, like women's kids camp, dance camp with the girls who dance there. And it's very community oriented. And I'm not saying Brooklyn isn't community oriented, but there's a little bit of a difference between the two, because Brooklyn, you have so many people so they can't really be too personal. Whereas Long Island can be more personal, can be more outreach to the community. And they do a great job with that for sure.